Welcome back, everybody, to Not Funny Guys Presents Red Dwarf Rewatch. I'm your host, Dr. John, and we are moving along here in Series 4. Yes, but before we get into it, please like, subscribe, share, follow along. Come join us on this experience, and I'm always looking for feedback, so please feel free to write into us at notfunnyguys.offthereels@gmail.com. I will, down in the description, I'll put a little ticker for it at the end of the episode, so stick around and find out more. But let's talk about this episode. This is episode 2, DNA, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, directed by Ed by our usual suspects, and this one released on the 21st of February, 1991. So, let's start with a summary. A mysterious derelict spacecraft containing extremely advanced technology, perhaps alien, docks with Red Dwarf, or they dock with it to bring it on board. They discover a DNA modifier, a genetic altering machine that can metamorphose organic life, but havoc ensues as Lister gets turned into a chicken and then a hamster. Crichton becomes human, and a curry monster is created from Lister's vindaloo. Let's break this episode down. So we have this gold pod. Meanwhile, Crichton and them are doing this super serious one. It's very much like the episode where the Scudder went crazy. They're in the comms room basically trying to figure out what's going on, figuring out what's happening. Crichton and all of them are looking. Cat comes in while they're trying to lock on this UFO. He plugs his hairdryer in by unplugging the console and takes out all the power. Seems very unconcerned by these things, but everybody starts yelling at him. He unplugged the console. His vanity knows no end. He then says, fine. He goes to plug his hairdryer into a wall outlet, almost takes out the power again, says, fine, I'll use gel. Lovely. Vanity knows no end. Like I said, they recover the pod. They go on board. But before they go on board, Rimmer basically thinks that like all aliens are just trying to return somebody they kidnapped before. And he's like, this time it'll be Glenn Miller. And he's like, yells over the PA, we don't want him. They do board the ship, and they split up into two groups. Rimmer complains he doesn't want to team with the cat, so he goes with Crichton instead. It's like an organically modified ship. And this is one of my favorite parts. Crichton and Rimmer are talking about who is more likely to get picked off first, and things go wrong. And Crichton says to Rimmer, after he decides he's going to take the rear, because the first guy, he said, well, isn't it the last guy who gets picked off? And so to compromise, they proceed to then rotate positions the whole time. Oh, love it. They finally apparently find something, and they radio Lister and the cat to come, whatever it is. Cat finds, while they're doing this, Cat finds some panel and starts messing with it. All of a sudden, Lister's trapped in a force field. He keeps messing around with the panel. Back with Crichton and Rimmer, the monster appears to be human. He's got a driver's license and a movie club card. But apparently it's indications that he was human, but now he's been morphed into something else. Back with Lister and them, the computer kicks on and starts talking about transmogrification. In the process, the cat continues to screw around, and eventually Crichton shows up. He keeps telling him to go get Crichton. But before he gets there, he gets turned into a chicken. Crichton arrives, and Rimmer arrives, and they find out basically it's a DNA modifier. Crichton thinks he can work it. They want to know if he can turn him back. Crichton appears to have decoded the pad. He accidentally, though, then turns Lister into a hamster. And then the cat proceeds to play around again, and he accidentally does it, the same thing he did to Lister to Crichton, except this time, because his brain is part organic, he actually, and this supposedly only transforms organic matter, it turns Crichton into a human. They do also eventually get Lister back into human form, finally. Lister talks about when he was a chicken, he just wanted an epidural because the idea of laying an egg was terrifying to him. Crichton is trying to be human while he's been a mechanized his whole life, and it's just full of fun of new experiences. And Holly basically says, well, he's supposed to be a normal 30-year-old male, but he's weird because he's not really a human. He's a mechanoid in a human's body now. Lister has brought him food, and he has a lovely way to describing scrambled eggs, or eggs. He's compiled a list of complaints about being human. One, he wants to know why there is no zoom function on his sight lens, on his optical nerves, and so he learns he has to bring things closer, and he has no other optical effects available, nor do his nipples work. Well, apparently one was to regulate temperature, and the other was a shortwave radio frequencies. Also, he's trying to figure out how recharging works as a human, and he says his three-pin adapter socket plug doesn't work, even though apparently he's been trying to stick it up his butt. Lister has to explain that recharging is just eating and sleeping for humans. And then he wants to talk about his penis. And this is where it gets really awkward. Crichton has taken a photo, and he says, "Is this normal? Looks normal." Crichton says, "It's hideous. Like, you looked at all your options." He said, "That one?" Right, and then gives him more Polaroid photos. This time it's two that go together, and is apparently his erect penis. What was he thinking about? Lister asked him, and he said he was flipping through the electronic appliance magazine. And Lister says no vacuum should ever give a man a double Polaroid. He's very convinced he just needs to go back to being a mechanoid. Lister really thinks he should change back. Crichton is trying to make fun of other mechanoids. He now thinks he's arrived at first class. He doesn't want to change back. Meanwhile, Cat and Rimmer are looking under a microscope, and apparently Rimmer thinks that the machine could bring him back to human form from a piece of his dandruff. Lister then tries to quote Descartes about this, "I am what I am," and Rimmer tells him that's not Descartes, that's Popeye the Sailor Man. The answer is yes, it's actually Popeye, it's not Descartes. Sorry, that'll come back at the end. Lister gets into a whole analogy about being who you are instead of being someone else. It's a whole play on the whole grass is the greener on the other side of thing kind of thing. He's very right. And he basically goes on about how being human is not all it's cracked up to be. And then the cat sneezes on Rimmer's dandruff cell. Oh, well, human Crichton now goes, and we finally see the spare heads again. Or the first time, maybe. Well, it's the first time we've seen them since the original one with the last day. We now see that there are three of them. Sparehead 3 is apparently having droid rot, and none of them are a fan of his choice, and he's getting called out by his own spare heads. Won't be needed. And he gets all down now, and he goes back to Lister, and he's talking about his emotions. He can't handle these, and he's depressed, and basically Lister tells him that's because something's wrong. He's very guilty in his behavior. And he basically says, "I've had my head up the recharge socket." That's what Lister tells him. "You've had your head up the recharge socket, so head up your ass." Lister talks of himself selling out once in his life too, and he went to a wine bar. That's it. Class traitor. Talks about his whole life could have been normal. Played, squash on Tuesdays with a guy named Gerald. How he just narrowly avoided this. Crichton wants to basically change back now. Lister quotes Popeye to Crichton, and I thought that was Descartes. He's like, "Me too." So Holly thinks she's fixed it. Tried it on Lister's curry, but they end up turning it into a Vindaloo monster. They run for their lives back onto the ship. They shoot the monster, nothing's happening. They lock it up and go bebble back to the DNA ship, and they make a whole reference to the whole polymorph thing again. They end up having to turn Lister into a super humanoid weapon, a man plus, and Holly gets it right this time, except he's very tiny after he's been made a super soldier, and he goes to face off against the curry monster when he discovers that, of course, it's vulnerable to lager. And so he throws a can in its mouth, shoots it, blows up, and the last thing we see before we cut away, assuming that obviously we put Crichton and him back together, is he's eating the explosion version of it all over himself. Ugh. But that's all for that episode. Next time we'll be looking at Justice. But until next time, which will be Friday. Yeah, Friday. We'll come back here and we'll talk more about these. I hope you guys have a great time. I do want to let you know that you should like, subscribe, follow us here. Again, looking for that feedback. Don't be hesitant to write in and give me some ideas about the whole keep going. I will keep finishing this series, but if you want me to change it up as I go along, open to the idea, but I need that feedback, folks, so hop on it. But in the meantime, if that's not your cup of tea, you can check out our other Not Funny Guys products. We have our main podcast, Off the Reels, where we talk about films, and we're in the process of having Casey once again identify another science fiction series you should be watching other than Star Wars. But we have now cleared the prequels, cleared the R2 in between Solo and Rogue One, and we are now onto the original trilogy itself with Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. So come join us, sharing our opinions there. My oldest son, throws in his little opinions just for fun. Come listen and hang out with us there. If that's not your cup of tea, we also have a more academically based pod with me and our not funny gal, Dr. Kristen, where we talk about things we are thinking about. We just got done with an episode on food and nostalgia in America. That was a lot of fun. And we'll be moving on to what is liberalism and illiberalism in our next one. So come hang out for that. We do fun topics. We have one of those usually coming out on Thursdays. And then if that's not your cup of tea, we also, of course, have Casey and Eric, the other Not Funny Guys. They have their pod, Wrestling with the Horror of It All. And this very upcoming weekend, they will be at Horror Nights or Fright Night or whatever it's called down in Orlando. But they have a podcast where they talk about horror movies and wrestling. So if those are something you're interested, you can check that out. And of course, they will be putting out lots of content all across our socials, which you can find down below. But most importantly, you can always write us via email, if not comment on things, or reach out to us on social. And our email is notfunnyguys.offthereels@gmail.com. You can see it below or on the ticker here. Love to hear from you. Any thoughts, ideas, ways we can improve the show, or just questions you want to ask, or complaints you'd like to register. There's no Space Corps directives here preventing you from any of that. But, like I said, like and subscribe, come back for more, and I will see you next time. So tell them, don't be a smeghead, keep it not funny.